Lots to talk about. First of all, let's just get started about this Mississippi Supreme Court. The Supreme Court met on Friday, and I'm sure you watched it or have an overview of that one. So tell me what your thoughts are on where they're going on this one.
Yeah, sure. And, Paul, we're actually representing one of the parties in that case. We're representing
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're representing a Mississippi business Gulf Coast restaurant group that owns several restaurants here in the state and is subject to this mandate. And so, yeah, we were very closely watching the oral arguments at the Supreme Court. And so, what's happened here is that in the lawsuit that we filed that along with the Attorney General of Mississippi, Lynn Fitch, and private parties in the states of Louisiana and Texas, and that went to the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit immediately issued an administrative stay against the Biden administration's vaccine mandate for private employers. It did that, back when we originally filed this lawsuit. Then the case was consolidated with every lawsuit against the Biden administration's vaccine mandate around the country. Those all got consolidated into the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Sixth Circuit reversed that stay. And so that's why all the parties like us went to the Supreme Court with an emergency request for it to institute a stay. We had this hearing on Friday. And, it's always dangerous to predict what the Supreme Court will do just based on the questions the justices ask at oral argument. But I guess I'll do just that because after hearing the oral argument, I'm very confident that the Supreme Court is going to act very soon. It could be as early as today to put an administrative stay back in place. When they do that, they're really tipping their hand that they think this mandate is unconstitutional. That would put it back on pause. It's supposed to go into effect today, but that would put it back on pause while we continue to litigate it. And honestly, I'm confident that at the end of the day, when we get to the end of this litigation, the Supreme Court will say that the mandate is in fact unconstitutional and put a permanent stop to it.
Aaron, what does this say about the president and the administration, too, creating nothing more than a Chinese fire drill across the state within all these courts and the liberal courts for the most part? What does this say about just the whole status of the court system and politics infused in this one? Certainly at a time when these impositions were made as the science, if you want to use the science are saying this thing is no more now. It's devolved down to something like a common cold.
Yeah. I think it says a lot. I mean, I think that, to me, it kind of illustrates a willingness on the Biden administration's part to take actions that, frankly, I think even the Biden administration knew that this was going to be struck down in court. I mean, this is such a gross overreach of federal power. It's really unprecedented in the history of America for the federal government to try to do something like this. We've never had a federal vaccine mandate in the history of the United States. And it's very clear that the federal government doesn't have the power to do that. And even if the federal government did have the power to do that, a federal executive agency like OSHA clearly does not have that authority. And so I think it kind of speaks to a willingness on the Biden administration's part to just play to their base and try to say, hey, look, we get caught trying is the expression I use for it. They know it's not lawful. They know it's unconstitutional, but they think that their base, for whatever reason, wants this to happen. And so they want to, go out and just show their base that they're trying to do it, even though they know that it's unconstitutional.
I know I'm stretching here a little bit, but does this have any commonality with the abortion, Mississippi abortion thing? In other words, when you say that this should be a state and not the federal law, the feds shouldn't direct this. Yeah. Can you tie that back to the one that they're considering now?
That's a very good parallel, Paul. I mean, you're really dealing with the same issue because here in this vaccine mandate case, it's really not a case about whether vaccines are good or whether vaccine mandates even are good. It's really a case about who decides that. And that it really goes to show the beauty of our federal system, our federalist system, is because, look, in a country like ours with diverse opinions, let's say that 50% of people would like to have vaccine mandates and 50% would not. Well, if you decide that at the federal level, if you're in a state like Mississippi where we don't want vaccine mandates, you're just stuck with that. But if you let the states decide, then in states like Mississippi where we clearly don't want vaccine mandates, we won't have them. In a state like New York where people really want it, maybe they would have it. But that's why we have a federalist system. And it is very close to what you said regarding abortion, is that is also an issue that is supposed to be decided by the states, not by the U.S. Supreme Court, not at the federal level, and let different states go about it, in ways that are in harmony with what their populations and what their citizens think.
You know, the uncomfortable thing about this whole thing as far as vaccines, because I've been on the air for a long time and talking about I think we were number one as far as the number of kids who were vaccinated in our state as far as going to school and all of those mandates. And you almost sound hypocritical to a point where those mandates have helped us keep the measles down and some very bad diseases out of the school system in our country. And then all of a sudden you come up to COVID. And should you get those kids a vaccine there? And I'm a little shaky on that one. And I know that it sounds like a hypocrite, but you have to weigh what the evidence is in this particular case.
Yeah.
And kids are a lot more susceptible to an outbreak of measles than they are as far as COVID's concerned.
Yeah. And two things. One, right now, the Biden administration isn't even talking about, school vaccines. They're talking about this is a workplace safety regulation, supposedly, which it just makes no sense. That's one of the reasons that it doesn't make sense is because OSHA has never tried to regulate a communicable disease that's prevalent in the general community and try to call that a workplace safety measure. But to your point about schools, that also illustrates the same point, which is this is a decision that should be made at the local level. And so if a certain school district and if the parents in that school district, say down the road when vaccines for children have a longer track record, if parents in a certain school district want that or certain states want that, that should be up to them. But that should not be a decision that's made at the federal level that applies economy-wide, that applies country-wide, and nobody can escape it.
Aaron Rice is director of the Mississippi Justice Institute. Aaron, what happens now? I mean, if they do put a stay on that, do they come back and address this at some finality, or what happens after that?
That's exactly right. That's what will happen. So the mandate actually goes into effect today, like I said. So I'm hoping that we will get an opinion from the U.S. Supreme Court at any minute now to put a stop to this. But today, the employers just have to submit their plans. They kind of have a little bit more leeway until they start getting fined up to $14,000 per violation for this. And there's some time built in for their employees to get vaccinated and things like that. But if the Supreme Court issues a stay against this, it'll, again, completely halt that. None of that will have to go forward. We will go back down to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, where we will then litigate not just whether there should be a stay, which really kind of involves a lot of the same issues. When you're litigating a stay, you're trying to tell the court, this is unconstitutional, we're going to win this case, and that's why you should go ahead and put a stop to it. But we'll be past that stage, and then we'll just be arguing to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals that, okay, time to address the final question, is this constitutional or not? I think we would prevail there, and, if that happened, and the government appealed it to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court agreed with us, then the whole regulation would be stopped forever, and we wouldn't have to deal with that anymore.
You said you had several clients in Mississippi as part of this.
Yeah.
And they were in the restaurant business?
Yeah, that's
or
right.
Food business?
Yeah, so our client is Gulf Coast Restaurant Group. They own a lot of restaurants here in Mississippi. So Half Shell Oyster House, if you're familiar with them. The Rack,
yes, I am.
They're very good. And the Rack House, also another very good restaurant. So, they've got over 1,000 employees, so they're subject to this mandate. Look, they're very pro-vaccine. We were talking about your views on vaccines. Again, this is not really a case about whether vaccines are good. It's about who has the power to decide on a mandate. But they from the beginning, offered their employees a $100 reward if they would go get vaccinated. So they're very pro-vaccine. If you do the math on that, with 1,000 employees, they're ponying up to $100,000 to encourage vaccination. But they also recognize it's a personal choice, and they've never been planning on forcing their employees to do that.
So much more to talk about as far as the vaccines and other things, and we'll do that with Aaron Rice. Well, I know them also because one of the gift certificates that I got for Christmas is a nice one from them. And
That's good.
I'm waiting to hobble over there to take that some advantage of that one. Aaron, hang on. We'll get to a lot more. And then again, as I mentioned, House Education Chair Richard Bennett and the House Vice Chair of Education, Kent McCarthy, joins us coming up at 8:05 on a busy Monday. Pour yourself a fresh cup of coffee, or if you're driving, be careful. Get to your destination safely. We'll be back with more coming up next. FDIC. Aaron Rice, who's the director of Mississippi Justice Institute, my hero after receiving a Purple Heart for sustaining combat injuries, loss of a left leg. I know what you feel like now, a little bit, as far as having my Dion scooter over here. Upon returning home, Aaron earned a degree in political science from Mississippi State University, awarded the National Truman Scholarship. Earned a law degree from the University of Mississippi School of Law. And we hope that he is not one of those Jerry Clower guys who's educated beyond his means. So,
well, thanks, Paul.
It's always good having you, sir. Let me ask you this. Have you been following, speaking of the Supreme Court, again, one of your interests is toward constitutional law. And the headline the other day was Justice Sotomayor falsely claims 100,000 children in serious condition from COVID.
Yeah.
I don't know where the hell she picked that up.
Yeah, that was actually in our case in the oral argument that we're talking about right now. So, yeah, I definitely heard that and was alarmed to hear that. There was a lot of kind of COVID misinformation going on. So, like you said, Sotomayor said 100,000 children are currently hospitalized and many are on ventilators. And look, the actual number is less than 4,000. And a lot of those are what they call incidental cases. In other words, children that are in the hospital for whatever other reason that happen to test positive for COVID while they're there. So definitely not 100,000. That got 4 Pinocchios when it was looked at. And then, Justice Breyer said that 750 million Americans are currently infected with COVID. We've only got 330 million Americans. So I guess everybody tested positive 2 or 3 times yesterday or Friday. And, most shocking to me was Justice Sotomayor. You and I were just talking about how the states have the power to do this and the federal government doesn't. And look, that's called the state police powers. It's really kind of constitutional law 101. Justice Sotomayor said, I don't understand the difference between the state's power and the federal government's power here, which is just mind-boggling. That you would learn that in your very first con law class in law school.
Wow.
So, but on the COVID misinformation, I did think it was very shocking, honestly. And I will say, part of what I think was going on, justices are usually very good at staying within the record, is what they call it. In other words, not bringing in extraneous facts that the justices think they know, just talking about what is in the briefing before them and has been shown in the evidence. And this case did rush up to the Supreme Court very quickly. It's been on an expedited emergency basis. So I think that may have played a little bit into why some of the justices were just throwing facts and figures out there that may or may not be correct. Obviously, a lot of them were incorrect. But it was very disheartening to see that, especially the liberal justices who were kind of using some of this information as the basis, it seemed like, for which they were saying, look, the federal government should act here and the federal government has the power to act here. And it was based on things that were just wildly inaccurate. So that was very disheartening to see.
Well, it is, because this is not a JP. This is not a justice of the peace guy.
Yeah.
This is a United States Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
She said, we have hospitals that are almost at full capacity with people severely ill and on ventilators. We have over 100,000 children, which we've never had before, in serious condition, many on ventilators.
Yeah. Just wildly inaccurate. And what's especially troubling to me about it is that if you look at what a lot of the kind of conservative, so to speak, justices were saying, like Gorsuch and others, they were saying we should not decide this issue and a federal agency should not decide this issue. The state should decide this issue and potentially Congress. But they were basically saying the question is who decides. And justices like Sotomayor and Breyer, who were citing these facts and figures, were in effect kind of saying that we should decide here and now that this danger is grave enough to justify what this federal agency is doing. So it's even more problematic when they, are kind of citing information that's wildly inaccurate, and they're using that as a basis for their decision.
Let me give you an example of this. If bad information gets into the brains of a Supreme Court justice, and where she is willing to utter that as facts, then if I'm sitting out there as an anti-gun it's quoting these same crime statistics, and if there's something in front of the Supreme Court justice, I got to worry about that.
Yeah.
Are you making your decisions based on bogus? That and thanking God that we had the fortitude to skip the appointment of Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
Now that we've seen what a train wreck he's been.
Listen, Paul, I agree with you. I think that was one of the things that was so disheartening about it, is that I think that kind of misinformation being, broadcast by a U.S. Supreme Court justice in an oral argument really does undermine faith in the court. I think that's an unfortunate thing, and I'm again was very disheartened to see that. Again, the only thing I will say is that I have not seen that before. I do think part of what prompted that was the emergency basis on which this happened. It's still not an excuse. It should not happen. But hopefully we don't see, U.S. Supreme Court justices in future cases just citing completely bogus information in oral arguments.
Anything? What else is going on as far as the Justice Institute's concerned?
Well, I mean, we're right now we're working on a free speech issue actually at Ole Miss University. We're just investigating that right now. Have not taken any legal action, but we're getting a lot of kind of pushback from the university on it. And so we had a professor up there who, in a class called COVID, called it the China flu, and then he got hauled in before the kind of speech police at campus, the Office of Equal Opportunity and Regulatory Compliance, and told he was a racist, told not to say that anymore. But then his class schedule was cut from 4 classes down to 1 class for this semester immediately following those remarks. And now the university says that those two things have nothing to do with each other. They have all these other reasons why they just decided to dramatically reduce his course load. But look, he's not eligible for health insurance anymore. His income has been cut by 75%. Wow. Looks to me, really looks suspicious, like they're trying to punish him for free speech here. And so we've been investigating that, but gotten a lot of, not cooperation from the university. Like I said, we filed a formal grievance with the university, trying to not go straight to litigation, try to give the university a chance to tell us what happened here, what their side of the story is, and if they really are violating his rights, to give them a chance to correct that without litigation. Yeah. But they would not let us represent him fully in that. They wouldn't let me be in the room for some of the meetings. They wouldn't let me speak on his behalf in other meetings that were held. So we had to kind of pull out of that process. Now we are requesting public records from the university, and they're still kind of they're trying to charge us $2,200 for the records, and just being very uncooperative. But again, it's kind of surprising to me because all we're trying to do here is to figure out what happened. We have not even filed a lawsuit, even though we could. And you would think the university would want to sit down with us, be very cooperative with that, tell us what their side of the story is, and we haven't gotten that.
I would think the first thing a layman, and we have a lot of laymen out there in this audience, we would think is, I'm sure you've checked to see if there's a trail of things when they say that's not the one thing that did this. Yeah. I'm sure you've talked to the guy.
I've definitely talked to our client for sure, and he doesn't feel like those reasons that are being offered are what really happened. Right. He's got a lot of reasons why he doesn't think that's true. But we are, like I said, that's what we're doing. Exactly what you said is investigating. We're requesting emails and documents from the university so we can look over it and say what did happen here. But even before that, we were trying to have a process with the university that's in their own policies where we would go in, sit down with them, kind of have an internal hearing about what happened here. And the university frustrated our efforts so much there that we had to withdraw from that process because they wouldn't even let our client be represented by his attorney in that process.
We've got coming on House Chair Richard Bennett and the House Vice Chair Kent McCarty, and one of the things that we'll talk about is CRT, and I know that's something that you guys are watching across the state. Yep. Is there any questions that you want me to ask them?
Well, I mean, I'd be curious on kind of what reforms that they are interested in. I mean, we've got some. One is a transparency issue. We just think it's wise to let parents be able to see what's being taught in their schools and have input into that. Another one.
Wait a minute. Why wouldn't they? All they got to do is read the homework or read the books that they're brought.
I can guarantee you it's very cryptic at this point. Not just the homework, but getting the curriculum plan from the school or anything like that. A lot of times, what's being taught is not very. It's not open and obvious to somebody who would look at it.
It's not going to be labeled as CRT.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, on the C-Smart text line, I've gotten this from numerous different people, SEL curriculum, and I have no idea what SEL is. Do you know?
Yeah, I've heard that, and it's my understanding of it is it's kind of a way to backdoor in CRT under a different label.
SEL is being taught at the Pass Christian School District. We have a new superintendent. This is her second year, SEL. Yeah. Can you hang on for one more segment, sir?
For sure.
We'll get the final thoughts coming up from Aaron Rice, the director of Mississippi Justice Institute, as we return back with that coming up next. Segment with Aaron Rice, who is the director of Mississippi Justice Institute. Aaron, anything ever happened? I mean, have we seen? I haven't seen a lot of eyebrow threaders stories in the news. Is that taken care of? All that's okay?
Yeah, that's completely taken care of. We do litigate cases like that, though. Yeah. Still, we love those. I call them economic liberty cases. Just cases of business owners, typically small business owners that are trying to just get out there and earn a living, and a lot of times there's some law that is in their way. So, the most recent one we're doing is for our client Donna Harris. She is a weight loss coach. She's actually got a degree in nutrition, a master's degree, and she was teaching group fitness exercise, and a lot of her clients wanted her to also teach them how to lose weight, just with their diet, and so she was doing that. And kind of got cracked down on. She got a letter that said that she would get thrown in jail if she continued to do that because she wasn't a nutritionist. And, what you got to understand here is that she was not doing what a nutritionist does, which is deal with people who are sick and have a medical condition, and you're writing a diet plan specifically to treat that medical condition. She was just dealing with, healthy people who wanted to lose weight. And, of course, we can all go online and find lots of information on how to lose weight or read books on it or magazines on it. So she was just doing the same thing that everybody else does in that regard. And like I said, got threatened with jail time for doing it. And so we filed a lawsuit for her.
Well, wait a minute. Couldn't any support group be also threatened? Any support group, because that's basically what it is.
That's exactly. That was a big part of our point. Is this is so vague? Who is it violating this law and who's not violating it?
Ladies at the First Baptist Church want to get together for a support group.
Exactly.
To pray for weight loss. They could get a letter.
Better be careful. You might get thrown in jail for doing that. And we're the most obese state in the nation. So I mean, somebody trying to help people lose weight, you'd think we'd want to encourage that.
Let me ask you this, because one of the bills, and I think there's going to be multiple bills on this, and I've read some of them. It says if you want to go to a physical therapist, you have to have a doctor's reference referral. Have you seen that one?
I don't know. I didn't know about that one. I hadn't seen that. So do you know what the purpose of the referral is?
Nobody. Well, I think it's just one of those things ingrained in our laws. If you wanted to go to a physical therapist, you can't go unless you have a referral from a doctor.
I have not seen that. I'd have to look into that a little more. But, we are actually representing a physical therapist as one of our clients on a separate matter, which is you're familiar with the certificate of need laws in Mississippi. And there's some really bad certificate of need laws around what are called home health agencies. And so he just wants to go into people's home and provide physical therapy there. These are people who tend to, typically are elderly people who can't go into physical therapy. They're trying to stay out of the nursing home, especially during this COVID stuff. And our con laws are so bad around that, you literally cannot open a home health agency in the state of Mississippi, and you have not been able to for 40 years. It's been illegal to open any new ones, although there are existing ones that have been around for a long time. And so he wants to do that, and there's absolutely no reason he shouldn't be able to do it. And so we filed a lawsuit for him, too, and we're challenging the certificate of need laws in Mississippi that prevent him from doing that.
Got it. In the final question here before we run out of time, you're a little bit dismayed because one of the things that the Biden administration and their handlers were saying, don't worry about this Afghanistan thing. As the time wears on, it'll fade from the headlines, won't even be an issue by the midterms. It seems like that's happening in one way or the other, but your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Paul. I mean, I have noticed myself, when the Afghanistan withdrawal, if you want to call it that, the botched withdrawal happened, I was very upset, as a veteran, not of Afghanistan, but of Iraq. And, of course, a lot of buddies that were in Afghanistan. And I'm somebody who signed up because of 9/11. And so, seeing that was very disheartening for me. It was very disheartening for a lot of my veteran friends. And I was, outraged by it. I came here on SuperTalk and talked about it. I wrote an op-ed about it. And I do agree with you that there was just this outrage in America seeing those images, really reminiscent of the fall of Saigon. And to me, it just was a total disservice to our veterans, to the Afghan people, to our allies and to our service members. I mean, just total disgrace. But I agree with you that it I guess in this 24-hour news cycle culture we live in, it does seem to be, being forgotten some. Now, I don't know when the midterms come around or another election year, presidential election. Yeah, maybe that'll get a little more attention. But I do think it was a disgrace. I don't think it should be forgotten.
I don't think it will be. I think it's there. In reality, it's hard to keep that burden and beat on it every single day, every single week.
Yeah.
But I do believe during the campaign it's going to be brought back up. And if not, the Republicans are just missing that opportunity and duty to do that.
Yeah.
Aaron, it's always good to see you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate it very, very much.
Good
Keep us
seeing you
informed.
too.